I became a Christian at 19 and eventually ended up in seminary and planting a church in Queens, New York. Now understand, Queens, New York City, our neighborhood of our church has 123 nations in it. Our church has over 73 nations in it. As we were growing and the church was moving along, by year 6 and 7, we hit a big wall. And I knew something was desperately wrong. I just wasn't sure quite what it was. I was tired. I was gaining the whole world, losing my own soul. One of our congregations had a split in it, and 200 folks went down the street to plant a new church. And I recognized I had a theological crisis. My spirituality container did not have room for this kind of loss, this kind of rage, this kind of woundedness. And then thirdly, my wife was very unhappy. My wife comes to me and she says to me, Pete, your leadership stinks. You don't have the courage to confront the people that need to be confronted. And so I'm quitting and I'm going to another church. Something was desperately missing in my whole formation, my understanding of spirituality, and that was that emotional health and spiritual maturity are inseparable, that it's not possible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature.
When EHS was first introduced, I mean, there's an element of, you don't know what you don't know. And so Pete started talking about speaking in the eye, just these different tools and concepts related to EHS. When he wrote the book, the material was now all packaged, and I felt that I knew now that I would be held accountable to that material. Pete wasn't just going to preach about this, but he was going to live it, and he was going to require his staff and invite the congregation to live out of this material. And that for me was depressing, because I knew how hard the journey was going to be to get to the place where I could live out of this material.
For me, that was such a new concept, and it was a liberating concept, what Pete and Jerry were bringing into our staff. They were bringing hope into my relationship with Peter, into our relationship. And the new concept of speaking in the eye, being aware of your feelings, how things has affected you can affect how you respond to your spouse. It's just the way that they were coming from this that I never heard before.
I remember Pete at the time was writing his book, Emotionally Healthy Church. And I remember as an intern, he would actually be writing his manuscript and he would put it in front of us and be like, hey, this is what I've been reflecting on and pondering over the past few years. What do you guys think? So I remember reading the Emotionally Healthy Church in manuscript form during that first year as an intern, being absolutely blown away and really reflecting on life and spirituality in a brand new way that I had never considered before. It was the first time that I started to see counseling. It was the first time that I was beginning to reimagine my faith in a way that embraced my emotional life. In other words, it's through the embrace and through the listening and through the emotionally healthy relationships that come through community. God meets us in that way that He cannot come through preaching or through reading a book. There's a way that we experience God through sharing our joys and our sorrows together. And I think that New Life, the small groups and communities really demonstrated that.
When I heard about the values of New Life, the values of monastic spirituality, when I heard about emotionally healthy spirituality and all of that there, that's what made me say yes to this community. We are open about our brokenness, about our vulnerabilities, and that's what attracted me to New Life. And so it was something that I was reading, something I was studying. It was the kind of life in Christ that I was hungering for. Prior to coming to New Life, I never really had a concrete example of community life that really exemplified that kind of brokenness and weakness and vulnerability. For a number of years, like my heart was longing for something like this. I just didn't know a place like this really existed.